Regarding the House and how its continued existence enhances my aura as Prime Minister, if I needed such magic properties to bolster my standing after 13 years as a Prime Minister, I must be in a pretty sad state.
Welcome to the Big Beacon. I am Andrew Shen. The Battle of Titans on Mount Olympus, aka Lee's family saga in Singapore, continued in the last few days in Parliament of Singapore with the Prime Minister's ministerial statement, the one where I obviously advised him, in which he took up, to come out with some straight talk as to exactly what happened. And I'm sure a lot of you judging through the 2 days of speeches, perhaps were hoping, just like I was, for some, revelations as to exactly what happened.
As far as I knew, that was how the family had settled the matter. Rationally, amicably, while Mr. Lee was still alive, which is what he had hoped to achieve and strived very hard to achieve. I heard nothing to the contrary until after my father died. I heard nothing to the contrary until after my father died.
It is clear that Lee Hsien Loong was ambushed by Lee Kuan Yew, Lee Shan Yang, and Lee Wei Ling over the writing of the last will. And Lee Hsien Loong didn't even know about the last will until it really was revealed 3 weeks after Lee Kuan Yew passed. It's just simply putting, leave aside their other roles in life. But simply Lee Kuan Yew being a father, 2 sons and 1 daughter. And when the father passed away, 3 weeks after the father passed away, the will was read in which the eldest son had no idea of the existence of that last will. Now, I don't know about how you all would feel, but I'm pretty sure for Lee Hsien Loong that was a major shock, because it was clear by the time that the last will was written that Lee Hsien Loong was basically ostracized by Lee Kuan Yew. As to the reason why he was being ostracized by his own father, I would guess it's because there was no trust. Now, simply from a human angle, I guess that was tragic enough. Anyhow, to continue, I'm sure that, if you were to follow the ministerial statement, the flow of events came this way. Upon knowing of this new will, upon knowing the demolition clause, if you trust Lee Hsien Loong's version, Lee Hsien Loong then went back to the cabinet and said that, well, there is this particular clause. There is a lot of noise, and I'm sure because Lee Hsien Loong himself said that.
My father agreed to come. He met the cabinet that very afternoon. But the ministers were unanimous in expressing their opposition to knocking the house down.
Lee Hsien Loong basically told Lee Kuan Yew that he was the only one that could get the demolition going, because if he was not in office, if he wasn't the Prime Minister, whoever was in charge would have kept the house as is. And definitely the basement for sure, and would not follow through with the demolition clause. So anyway, Lee Hsien Loong basically knew that the sentiment within at least the cabinet, if not the entire party, wants to keep the house, basically notified and told Deputy Prime Minister Teo to take care of it. To resolve it, because you have 2 opposing forces right now. One, which is the government, but Lee Hsien Loong wants to keep the house. The government, in the sense that of the ruling party, wants to keep the house, but the owner of the house, which is Lee Kuan Yew, he actually wanted to have it demolished. When you have that 2 opposing forces, you need to resolve it. And DPM Teo chose to set up a ministerial committee to look into it, quote unquote, look into it. Now, one of the most relevant questions over this particular flow of events came from a nominated member of parliament.
Why must a ministerial committee be set up when we have the Preservation of Sites and Monument Board, which can decide on whether if Oxley 36 should be preserved, demolished, or any other options?
Right. If there was one theme that went through all of the speeches by the PAP members, that was, rules were followed, rules were followed, rules were followed. Of course, the rules were written by the PAP to give it as much laxitude as possible. But, that was the strongest message that you got, which was the entire procedure followed rules. But as this nominated members of parliament, Kok Heng Leun, said so succinctly, that there is a procedure in place already, for protecting houses or buildings of historical interest. Why this particular one bypassed this procedure? And of course, this very relevant question was immediately answered by DPM Teo's speech.
Madam Speaker, so what is the committee's interest? Our interest is confined to obtaining as full a picture as possible of Mr. Lee's thinking on the House. Now we have to decide. If we want to take Mr. Lee's views into consideration, then we must understand what they were. If we decide that we are not going to take Mr. Lee's views into consideration at all, then we don't need to ask.
Basically, despite the fact that Lee Kuan Yew has repeatedly said that he wanted to demolish 38 Oxley Road after his death, that DPM Teo said he wanted to have a ministerial committee to find out to divine what Lee Kuan Yew really wanted. And for the benefit of all my viewers out in Singapore, I recreated this ministerial committee's main work in divining Lee Kuan Yew's wishes. Lee, this is DPM Teo. I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay? And you move the plate and answer me. All right, first question. Lee, do you really want to demolish the house? Oh, I can feel it. Oh, okay. Lee, you do know that a lot of us, especially in the PAP, wants to keep the house. Is that okay? Come on, move it on the line. Lee, you do make it very clear on how you feel. But you do know that we are the government, and we can write whatever rules we want to. That's too bad. Whoa! Why so angry, Lee? Why so angry? Right. Basically, when Lee Kuan Yew was living, he has told you many times, he has told the public many times, the cabinet many times, everyone around him many times, and yet you still decide to hold a ministerial committee to divine what he really was thinking. Oh my God. What hire a seance. But anyways, the question of whether it's a secret committee, especially to Lee Wai Ling and Lee Hsien Yang, was answered by DPM Teo as well with this particular line.
How can they be making representations to a committee if this was a secret committee and they didn't know it existed? This doesn't make sense at all.
Now, DPM Teo basically says, well, they know it exists, so it can't be a secret. Honestly, I cannot believe that DPM Teo actually had the cheek to say that when, Lee Hsien Yang obviously knew, and Dr. Lee Wai Ling obviously knew that the committee existed. But what they were pissed off and what they didn't know about was, who's in this committee? No idea. What is this committee looking into? No idea. Right? So, what kind of options are they weighing? No idea. I mean, it really is that simple, right? I mean, yes, technically, the Lee Wai Ling and Lee Hsien Yang knew of the existence of this committee, but, that is not why he's calling it secret. I mean, DPM Teo is that technocratic, worst technocratic answer, the embodiment of that technocratic answer. Completely accurate, but completely insincere. Honestly, I mean, you really cannot be more insincere. Of the 2 days, if this ministerial statement is to clear the air, right? I mean, how can DPMTO be so insincere when it calls this? It's not really a secret committee. But anyhow, of course, the PAP, instead of just taking it and trying to explain the accusations, had to go on attack.
After I pointed out the 4 possible options for the property, including the fact that demolition clears the way to appeal for redevelopment, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong now says that he has no inclination to develop the house for profit. Inclination is a word that leaves a lot of room for change of mind. Why is he being so careful? If he changes his mind, then the land is potentially worth a lot. Why doesn't he just rule it out categorically?
Right. Honestly, she reminded me of her.
Why, it's Maleficent. What does she want here? Shh. Well.
Inclination is a word that leaves a lot of room for change of mind. Why is he being so careful? If he changes his mind, then the land is potentially worth a lot. Why doesn't he just rule it out categorically?
But anyhow, the PAP couldn't help it. They had to go into attack. It's still about the money. When the best path is to be humble, because yes, technically rules was being followed. The rules are all written by the PAP. And honestly, I mean, you know, the sheer height of arrogance. Of course, there is also the question of the Workers' Party. The Workers' Party had a very great question.
Some doubts I have on this question, nagging question that why he didn't sue.
That in Singapore, even Mr. Lee's house and Mr. Lee's wishes are subject to the rule of law.
I wonder whether the Prime Minister is not worrying that the PAP as a ruling party will be seen as double standard. Does he forgotten that the former Prime Minister, Mr. Goh Chok Tong is your ESM, sued the Workers' Party candidate Teng Liang Hong during general election 1997 for just making a police report. But now this is allegations much more serious than that. And more importantly, we're talking about upholding the legacy of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, that the nation, the laws, the birth family, above individual. By using family, own sibling, cannot sue. After all, we are all brothers and sisters. But political opponents and critics sue until your pants drop. Given the past track record, not doing so would risk the government giving the impression that it is afraid of what the Lee siblings might say or reveal. This will taint the trust Singaporean has placed on the government.
Right. In fact, the nominated members of parliament also asked the same thing.
If the allegations are true, then the accused must be held to account. And if the allegations are false, then the accuser must be equally held to account. Otherwise, how are we the people to make sense of those who are less powerful, who have been sued or bankrupted for equally or less defamatory remarks?
In my first Chinese video about this entire affair 2-3 weeks ago, I shared the fact that Lee Hsien Loong actually sued me for libel, but because I was based in Hong Kong, the case went nowhere. But the question of why Lee Hsien Loong and Lee Wei Ling is not sued for libel do boggles the mind. I mean, if national interest was so overriding in the case of 38 Oxley Road, then why is this particular defamation case not being filed? If the Workers' Party are just mad as hell, You know, they had to dig up the Nassim Jade scandal, which I had to look up on Wikipedia because I was still in secondary school, and which actually ticked off the emeritus senior minister, Goh Chok Tong. But it has a good point. Why are you not suing them? Which brings me to the point whereby it's now time to guess what's going to happen next. The best way forward, obviously, if the PAP wants to solve this for the benefit of Singaporean democracy, the Workers' Party and this particular nominated member of parliament has a great idea.
The Prime Minister's accusers should have an independent, neutral space where they can be held to account for their words, put down their side of the story on official record, sharing whatever arguments and evidence they have to back their claims. Such a hearing can happen either as an independent select committee or a commission of inquiry, which would have full authority to investigate the accusations, to summon evidence surrounding the most biting allegations raised in the original What Has Happened to Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's Values document about the supposed misuse of power by the Prime Minister and his wife, the supposed Orwellian threat of state intimidation and monitoring, and the supposed nepotism behind key appointments in a public service. Because if investigations reveal that there is truth and substance to the accusations, then wrongs must be made right.
Not only does an independent commission be set up, it could be chaired by a judge, but honestly, I don't even think that a judge can do it now to pacify the situation. This independent committee can be set up, consisting of members of parliament, right? Just like they do all around the world, right? The legislatures, the lawmakers set up a committee to investigate a certain issue. But because this house, because 38 Oxley Road is where the PAP was founded, right? So I would advise the PAP and the entire PAP recuse themselves from this particular committee. Okay, now you would be like, but there's like 9 people left, right? Okay, if you count the nominated members of parliament, that'd be a little bit more. But I would suggest that the PAP not even involve themselves in this independent committee, in this independent commission. If this independent commission was given full powers to subpoena individuals as witnesses and as under oath to explain what happened and the situation be looked into completely, then this might actually save the entire sorry saga. Without which...
The Prime Minister has shared his hope that this full and public airing in Parliament will dispel any doubts that have been planted and strengthen confidence in our institutions and our system of government. And I hope so much for that to be true too. But from what I know of ground sentiments, I don't think that's going to happen for those who are unconverted or those who are sitting on the fence. Mr. Lee Hsien Loong has already made it clear to the many Singaporeans following his Facebook post that he believes this parliamentary session is a forum that again places Prime Minister before his subordinates, who lack sufficient background and evidence of the numerous instances of abuse and conflicts of interest, many yet to be raised. That is why I hope the Prime Minister will consider subjecting himself to an independent committee of inquiry on the allegations made against him and his government.
Yes, questions will linger. Undoubtedly linger. But, you know, for my guess, this is not going to happen because I do think something fishy must have gone on, you know. And therefore, they really do fear that if an independent commission formed by members of parliament, especially if only consisting of independent and from the Workers' Party, they will find things in which the PAP won't want to be revealed. And of course, there's going to be winners and losers too. I do think a defamation lawsuit will probably be filed against Lee Hsien Loong and Lee Wai Ling. And I guess Lee Hsien Loong himself has calculated that and therefore has left the country. Another big loser from the ministerial statements has been, I would say, Ho Ching. I would say that everyone has seen the back of her. I don't think she would have any future. If she even comes back in any role, she'll basically sink the PAP. So, you know, Ho Ching is out. Another loser of all this has to be DPM Teo. Simply, if Lee Hsien Loong really did recuse himself and completely left DPM Teo conduct his affairs in the ministerial committee over 38 Oxley Road, then at the very least, he's guilty of gross incompetence. I mean, how can you have Dr. Li Wei-ling and Li Shan-yang be this pissed off, and yet still not respond to it? I mean, this committee was set up, last year? Dr. Li Wei-ling and Li Shan-yang only came public, a few weeks ago, right? So you basically let this particular hatred fester for a whole year. You can, if the ministerial committee was as innocent as you proclaim it to be, which is to figure out, in decades' time when Dr. Li Wei-ling was to move out of the house, what kind of options a future government would have. I mean, if it was as innocent as that, why are you so callous? Why are you so insensitive? Why do you have to piss off the two individuals in which the only two individuals that can probably kill the PAP? I mean, simply from incompetence level, the DPMTO should go, right? Anyways, I don't know what's going to be the next step. I don't think the Workers' Party wasn't bold enough. I would still say that they're still suggesting things to the Prime Minister. I mean, they should be demanding that an independent commission, only consisting of non-PAP members of Parliament, investigate this whole entire affair. Because, as I say, the 38 Oxley was where PAP was founded. As for the House itself, I think that's where the ultimate irony now all lies. If you were to ask yourself, who now wants to have that house demolished most? It has to be the PAP and everyone in the government now. Of all the headaches it has given it, for what? I mean, honestly, the people themselves.
A reported poll on 23rd December 2015 indicated that 77% of the people said they would want to see Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's wish for the house be carried out.
Right, the people themselves want this house demolished as according to Lee Kuan Yew's wishes. We in the government was the only one in its way. So you have Lee Kuan Yew wanting to demolish it. You have Li Wei-ling and Li Shan-yang wanting to demolish it. You have the people supporting demolishing it. And there's the PAP who have been doing all this. Doing all of this. But honestly, if 38 Oxley was to stand, yes, it'll be remembered as to where the Republic or maybe PAP was born. But I guess it'll be most famous for exactly what has happened in the last few weeks. And is that what the PAP wants to happen? Something to remind them of their, well, at the very least, bullying. But honestly speaking, this entire story saga up to this point has created more questions. But if it was the old days when Lee Kuan Yew himself was here, Lee Kuan Yew has very successfully instilled a sense, I won't call it paranoia, okay, that would be too harsh, but a constant reminder of the threats that Singapore faces as a small nation surrounded by, say, Muslims or, the racial makeup, which make it highly volatile. When you have that national security risk, there will be laxitude given to the government. But in the words of the current head of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, he recently wrote, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago in the Straits Times, talking about what Qatar could have learned from Singapore, or what Singapore could have learned from Qatar. And he said that, Lee Kuan Yew was a special case. People gave him face. I mean, first of all, he was the founding father, but he was also respected as a global statesman, right? And I'm sure the same is true. I mean, he was a giant that I don't think the Republic of Singapore will ever see again. And therefore, if current government was to expect that they can do the same thing, I mean, Nassim Jade scandal, you can go, if you are too young to remember what Nassim Jade scandal was all about, go check out its Wikipedia, right? And when, the Workers' Party candidate was to simply raise the issue, he was sued for defamation to the point of imposing self-exile. I mean, you can't do the same thing because you simply don't have the stature, to simply repeat like, that we're playing by the rules, we're playing by the rules, we're playing by the rules. It's not going to cut it with the Republic of Singapore anymore. So I think it is true, this entire whole saga could be a benefit to a post-Lee Kuan Yew democracy in Singapore. But as of so far, I don't see it. Thank you for watching.